Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Senior Safety Advice YouTube channel. So very happy to have you here. My name is Esther Kane. I'm a retired occupational therapist and an aging in place specialist and a dementia care specialist as well. I've had many years of experience working with geriatric population, and it truly is a passion of mine. Anyway, today in today's YouTube channel, we're going to be talking about communities. Going to be talking about aging in place versus living in a community. There's so many wonderful advantages to aging in place. And the truth is, I think I've read somewhere that 92% of seniors want to age in place. It makes sense. I mean, everyone wants to stay in their own home where they're comfortable, and have been probably for many years. But there are downsides to it. And of course, there's upsides to it. I think a lot of older adults don't want to move to a community setting, mostly because they just don't want to move. The act of moving is very, very difficult. There's so much involved, not just the expense, but just upheaval of everything. Plus, you're leaving the community that you've been in for so very long. So yes, while aging in place provides a sense of comfort and familiarity and, of course, proximity to things that the stores you normally go to, family, friends, so forth, if they're in that area. There's several factors to consider that might make it less ideal. So we're going to talk about that. So first, subscribe to our channel. We're almost at 13,000 subscribers. We're extremely excited about that. So thank you very much. We appreciate each and every single one of these subscribers. And, of course, hit the like button and the bell and all the other fun stuff you need to do on YouTube to get notified of when we publish a new video. And don't forget to listen to our podcast as well. We have those on this YouTube channel as well. All right. So there's 10 things that I want to talk about initially, about aging in place. The first issue is, of course, safety. As we get older, our homes tend to become less safe, due to our own physical abilities or inabilities. I have friends who live in 2-story houses. I live here in Georgia, and very difficult to find a 1-story house here in Georgia. So as they get older, it's becoming more and more difficult for them to go upstairs and downstairs, basements and upper levels, and they end up really just basically living on the main level, as long as they have a bedroom on that level. They don't always do. So you want to make the home as safe as possible. So either a residential elevator or a stair lift, anything that you can do to help you to get to those places, those floors, if that's what you need to do. Otherwise, you may be considering the fact that that home is not suitable for you any longer. You don't want to wait for something to happen in order to do these changes. I just got this comment yesterday on a YouTube video about I'm an 84-year-old woman, and taking a shower can be a little scary, but I'm just not there yet. And I'm thinking to myself, well, wait a minute. Why wait for something to happen to get there? Why not go ahead and make that shower as safe as possible so that you don't have something happen? That's the whole concept of aging in place. You want to do these things before an event happens. You don't want to wait to fall and break a hip or break a shoulder or crack your head or, your knee or anything like that. And then your life is altered, really. And as we all know, as we get older, it takes a lot longer to heal, if you even do. So why wait? Go ahead and make the modifications in your home if you can to make that as safe as possible, if that's what you plan to do, is to age in place. The other factor that I want to talk about, the second factor, is isolation. If friends and family move away or pass on, aging in place can really end up being very isolating. You know, the community that you used to live in is no longer there. The social events aren't there. The people aren't there. Maybe even the restaurants and the stores aren't there any longer. Another issue also is if you live in a rural area. Isolation is a very big issue for people in rural areas, as well as getting access to aid, to healthcare, and so on. So you want to try and look for anything that you can to help you. You know, after my husband passed away, I moved from a regular suburban home to another suburban home, but in a cluster home community where my neighbors are all around me. And it's just a safer environment. I have people around me all the time. I have help when I need it, and they do as well. So you're looking for that sense of community to help you as you get older, because there's no doubt that as we get older, we need more help. So we need to reach out for that help, and getting that, accessing that at an earlier stage, earlier age, is much easier if you know people around you for, you know, a lot longer than just moving in initially. As I said, number 3, healthcare access. Healthcare access is very, very important. If you live in a home that is 45 minutes, an hour away from, you know, good healthcare, then that is going to be a problem. I have a very good friend who moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico. And from what I'm reading, the healthcare services in Santa Fe are not necessarily that great. I'm not sure why, because there's a lot of retirees living in Santa Fe, but for whatever reason, they're not. So when I mentioned that to my friend, she said, well, that's okay. Albuquerque is only 45 minutes away or an hour away. And I said, well, yeah, but that's a long way if you're having a heart attack. So obviously you want to live someplace that is close enough to healthcare access, because you're going to need it. You know, if you live long enough, you're going to need some healthcare services. So why not be somewhere that's close enough to make it not only easier to get to your doctors, but to make it easier to get to a very good healthcare facility to help take care of you if something were to happen. And this is especially true if you are dealing with a current chronic illness such as diabetes or a heart condition or, you know, high blood pressure or, you know, any other plethora of chronic diseases that tend to crop up as we get older. Number 4, home modifications. Adapting a home for aging needs is not necessarily inexpensive. It can usually be quite expensive, especially if you haven't been updating your home on a regular basis anyway. And not all of them can be addressed. You know, I have another friend whose mom just passed away, and she was unable to go home after she fell and broke her hip because the home that she had did not have, none of the doorways were wide enough to accommodate her in a wheelchair, and she had to be in a wheelchair. So there was no way for her to get into the into her bedroom or into her bathroom. You know, she would have to basically live in the living room, and it was even a tight fit just to get her into the house itself. So making modifications in that home would have cost quite a bit because so many doorways would have had to have been widened. And then the rooms themselves, the bathroom especially, had to be reconfigured completely so that she could access the toilet, the shower, even the sink from a wheelchair position. So home modifications can cost quite a bit. And that's another reason to begin home modifications in your late 50s, early 60s, just because you're updating things in bits and pieces versus having to put in a ton of money initially. And this is, of course, if you plan to age in place, if you find that the community you're in is a very good community, you're near healthcare, you've got friends, social events, and all of that hopefully will continue as you grow older. Number 5, daily task management. Things like housekeeping and meal prep and personal care all become increasingly difficult as you get older. There's no doubt about it. Not only, mobility wise, but visually, you tend to, things don't look as, it's more difficult to see things. You tend to have a natural yellowing of your eye as you get older. So if the countertop is dirty, yellow stains, you may not even notice it. There's a lot of things you may not be able to perceive simply because all our senses become dimmer as we get older. And then just the natural act of cleaning a home. If you live in a 4,500 square foot home or 4,000 square, whatever, a large home, that's a lot to clean. It's a lot to dust and mop and keep clean, multiple bathrooms and so on and so forth. If you have help, that's great. That's the best way to do it if you can afford that. But then there's also the regular maintenance. Lights go out, electrical things have to get fixed, appliances have to get replaced, driveways have to get redone, furbished, finished, I don't know. But all kinds of things happen outside, inside. Sometimes windows have to get replaced. There's a lot of maintenance into a home in order to keep it safe for yourself and accessible as well. So you want to consider those costs that are all wrapped up into staying at home and aging in place. If you can afford a lawn care service and someone to come in and clean your house, meal prep these days is very easy. There's so many programs available now that you can order meals to be delivered, not just Meals on Wheels, but so many delivery. But again, all of these cost money. So, if you're unable to continue cooking or you find it difficult or you find that you're just, eating soup out of a can every night instead of making an actual meal, you might want to consider a community where you can easily get ready-made meals. I'm not talking about assisted living. I'm just talking about 55 plus communities that are usually close to restaurants where you can go and just get a nice, easy meal at night. At least it'll be more nutritious than a can of soup, I think. Number 6, emergency response. If you live far away, 30, 40 minutes, an hour away from emergency response services, that can be quite detrimental to your health. If you're having a stroke, if you're having a heart condition, a heart attack, that is a very long time to wait for some kind of service to come to you, even if you call 911. So you want to make sure that the community you live in as you get older is able to provide you with that type of service. Unless, of course, you don't care, but usually we care. Your family would care. Your loved ones would care. So you definitely want to look at that. And I know I mentioned that earlier. Number 7, cognitive decline. Now, this is a little difficult because most of us don't recognize or want to admit that we're having some kind of cognitive decline. But most seniors do. Most older adults do have some type of cognitive decline, even if it's just, short-term memory. You forgot what you had for breakfast that morning. Did you even have breakfast that morning? Did you remember to take your pills, take the dog out, whatever, anything like that. Those are usually very common, but they can easily progress to something more. And the funny thing is about cognitive decline is that because you are having cognitive decline, you're not able to recognize the fact that you're having cognitive decline. So you want to rely on others to help you. You want to rely on your physician to test you, to assess you. You want to rely on your friends and your family to keep you alert, to keep an eye out on, anything that you may be doing incorrectly. If you find that you can't find your keys for whatever reason and eventually find them in the refrigerator, well, then that's definitely a big sign that something is going awry and you need to get an assessment. But usually if you're having cognitive decline, living in a home can be better than moving because familiarity is very important. But if you're living alone, then that's not necessarily a very safe way to be because cognition, if it begins declining, it doesn't usually arrest. More often than not, it continues to decline. So it gets to a point where you may make the living environment that you're in very unsafe. You could leave a pot on a stove and it could cause a fire. Anything can happen. Anything at all. Number 8, a caregiver burden. Oftentimes, we get a lot of emails and a lot of YouTube comments and even podcast comments from family caregivers who are caring for their aging parents. And it is an incredible burden on them if they have to travel an hour or even 30 minutes or even 10 minutes to get to some place where their parents are, to get to their parents' home, to bring them meals, to take care of their house, to begin taking over their finances if need be, to help them if they're becoming physically unable to get up from a chair and so forth. And a lot of the issues that we get are, their parent is refusing to move. It's very difficult for then the family to tear apart their lives in order to care for their parents. I know that there is that idea that we took care of our children, so now our children should be taking care of us. Yes, I am all for that, but at the same time, there has to be a compromise because the children themselves have their lives as well. And I don't think any parent wants to disrupt or destroy their children's lives just for their own benefit. So relying on family members for care is wonderful. If you have that, that's amazing. Consider yourself fortunate, but don't do undue burden on them. Don't put undue burden on them simply because you need more help. And if you need help now, you're going to need more help next year and the year after that and the year after that. So you want to plan for that. You want to make sure to do what needs to get done to keep yourself safe and to keep your family happy and in a loving way. We all want that. Number 9, financial considerations. Maintaining a home can be costly, especially if you're on a fixed income. And I'm not talking just about, maintaining the roof, replacing the AC or anything like that. I'm talking about taxes as well. A lot of, if you move into a community, be it a village kind of community, a 55 plus, a assisted living, whatever. Some people say, oh, that's so expensive. Not necessarily, because if you sit down and crunch the numbers and you think of the taxes that you're paying and all the home maintenance that you're paying, it probably ends up being either the same or even less. So you want to take a look at that. You want to have a realistic look at what you spent last year, knowing, that you're probably going to spend a little more each year. I know my taxes go up each year. And number 10 is your quality of life. Sometimes a different living arrangement can actually improve your overall quality of life. I'm just reading this book called The Longevity Economy. And in this particular chapter, the author was discussing moving to communities like the villages in Middle Florida and near Ocala. Now, I'm not saying that it's a great thing to move to one of these communities, but for a lot of people, it is a great thing because they're moving to a place that has everything built into it. They have their own home. At the same time, they have all the amenities that are needed right there. They don't have to leave that community. There's downsides to that as well, because you are living in a bubble. And if there are issues with that concept of living in this particular bubble, but it's safe and it's comforting and it's communal. So it's a wonderful way to get to know neighbors and friends. And again, if you do it earlier versus later, I know my mom-in-law moved into an assisted living at the age of 100. And I remember her telling me that she waited too long. She said, I simply waited too long to move here. I could have enjoyed so many more things, but now I'm too old. I can't hear, I can't see very well, and I should have been able to do this much sooner. So those are the top 10 things, but there's a few other things that I want you to consider before you make the final decision to age in place and or to move to another type of communal setting. One is you want to look at your outdoor spaces. The old home that I lived in before with my husband, there were no sidewalks. So when you took a walk in the community, you were out on the street along with the cars and everything else. That isn't such a good thing. There are a lot of people walking their dogs. There's a lot of kids on the streets. And although it was streets inside the community, there's still a lot of cars going through that community. So that wasn't such a great thing. So if you don't have sidewalks, I would, think about the fact that, it's important to get out, get some fresh air, to take a walk. Walking is a wonderful exercise as you get older. So you want to hopefully live in a community where you have access to that. Sidewalks are great to be able to walk out of your house, walk on a sidewalk, and to walk back home. And if you can have green spaces and walking paths and public accessibility to public stores or restaurants. That's one of the reasons that I moved to where I am living now. There are sidewalks. There's a 6-mile greenway, that's adjacent to my community. I go right from my community into that greenway. It connects 3 parks. So from that greenway, I can walk along the parks. There are 2 little communal parks right here where they do a lot of festivals. There's restaurants, 5-minute walk from where I live, little shops. And that's the whole reason that I moved to this area, because it's walking accessibility. And it forces me to get out and enjoy the air. Otherwise, I'd be in front of the computer all the time. The next thing I want to talk about is transportation. As we get older, it becomes a lot more difficult to drive. I know I myself have trouble driving at night. I often take an Uber if I have to go anywhere at night, or Lyft, whatever, one of those rideshare programs. Excuse me. But if you don't have access to transportation options, if something were to happen to your car, if you were unable to afford to get it fixed or buy a new car, if you simply were unable to drive any longer or just unsafe to drive, then you want to have access to transportation. Or at the very least, you want to have access to a place where you can at least walk to some things if you need to. Grocery store. Nowadays you can have groceries delivered as well. There are so many wonderful things that you can use as delivery services, groceries and meals, and Amazon. You can pretty much get anything at Amazon. So there's all those issues that you need to consider and think about. And again, it's difficult to think about not being able to do those things when you're in your 50s and maybe your 60s. But believe me, as you get older, it comes up. And there's no reason to wait until, it's upon you, because it's just so much more difficult to change as you get older. So you want to at least be thinking about these issues and considering what needs to get done. And the last thing I want to talk about is socialization. It's so important for all of us to maintain our social activities. The most difficult thing, though, as you get older, is that your social circle you're growing older with all these people that you've known since your 20s, 30s, 40s, and so on, or even younger than that. And as you grow older with them, they may not age as well as you. They may not live as long as you. I remember my mom-in-law telling me that the saddest part of her life was everyone was gone. Her brothers, her sisters, her mother, her father, her cousins, her aunts, her uncles, everyone she grew up with, all her friends were gone. So she found herself at the age of 95 or younger, I think, having to reconnect or connect now new connections with people. And she didn't feel that same camaraderie with them. Of course, she didn't know them as well. It wasn't the same for her. And it wouldn't be for anybody. So how do you keep that up? Well, one thing you can do, of course, is to join organizations, volunteer or work at, or just to join them where there are younger people. It could be anything. It could be the Sierra Club. It could be a quilting club. It could be working part-time at the library, anything at all where there are younger people around you, and becoming friends, engaging in social activities with that younger crowd. Because then as you get older, they of course are getting older as well, but they're not in your same age group. And I always thought that one of the greatest retirement places would be a small college town where you could attend classes. Maybe you could even teach a class if, you had those skills, and you were involved in a community that had older adults, the professors and the teachers, as well as younger adults as well. So it's always wonderful to have a large circle of a larger group of adults. It's a good way to maintain your social activities, which is so important as you get older. We all need socialization in our lives. And even if you're an introvert like me, you need that socialization every now and then. So, all right. I know this is kind of a long video, almost 30 minutes, but I hope this information is useful for you. The point is, the bottom line here that I want to make is consider the issues of aging in place, which is wonderful. It's wonderful to age in place, but you want to make sure that it's safe. You want to make sure that it's appropriate, considering wherever it is that you're living. And if you do decide that it may not be appropriate for you, then begin checking out places like Top of the World in Ocala, or the Villages, or any other. I know that there are places, is it Sun Valley, I think, out in Arizona. And there are places like that everywhere. But then there's also villages like the Beacon Hill village up in Boston. There's so many wonderful alternative types of living nowadays, tiny home communities and all kinds of communal kind of living that you can look into. So check them out, investigate them, and see what appeals to you. And you may end up having a retirement that is more amazing than you ever thought you could. All right. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Again, don't forget to subscribe. We appreciate each of our subscribers. Thank you so very much. And I'll see you next time. Take care.